Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating science of why old buildings give us the creeps. Have you ever wondered what's physically happening when a room just suddenly feels off? We're going to look at the hard data to uncover the invisible forces that trigger our deepest, darkest fears.
Let's start with that incredibly relatable, kind of gloomy and sinister feeling of dread. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You step off the street into a dark, old building, or maybe you're walking down the stairs into an unfinished basement, and suddenly, the hair on the back of your neck literally stands up. A wave of unexplained panic washes over you. For centuries, humanity has had a very specific way of explaining this sensation. But as we'll see, science is finally giving us a completely different lens to view this through.
So let's contrast our two main suspects for that creepy feeling. On one side, we had the classic, supernatural explanation, right? Ghosts, poltergeist, loitering spirits haunting an ancient space. And on the other, well, we have a much more mundane, everyday reality hiding right beneath the floorboards, aged pipes, outdated ventilation systems, and clunky old boilers. Could our most terrifying ghost stories actually just be a dire need for some modern plumbing upgrades? Let's find out. Section 1. The hidden suspect, infrasound. Let's introduce our scientific villain. So that villain is called infrasound. This refers to sound waves with a frequency that sits entirely below the lower limit of human audibility. We're talking about incredibly deep, rumbling acoustic waves. In the context of an old manor or a creaky house, these waves are constantly being generated by the old infrastructure. Think of the hum of ancient ventilation systems, the vibration of heating pipes, or the low, steady rumble of a basement boiler. They're pulsing through the environment, but they completely bypass our conscious hearing.
Specifically, these waves vibrate below 20 hertz. That specific number is crucial because it's the absolute threshold for human hearing. Because these waves sit just below that 20 hertz mark, they are completely invisible and completely inaudible to human ears. But, and this is a massive but, they are still very much a physical force. Just because your ears can't consciously register the tone doesn't mean your body isn't absorbing the kinetic energy of those deep acoustic waves.
Section 2. The secret subwoofer experiment. So how exactly do you test an invisible, inaudible suspect? To answer that, we turn to some really fascinating research published in the journal Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience. At first, the researchers actually wanted to test this in the wild. They tried running their experiments at a local haunted attraction appropriately named Dead Mountain. They wanted to see if piping infrasound into the attraction made people more scared as they walked through. But, well, the real world is messy. The environment at Dead Mountain was just way too chaotic to isolate the specific variables, and the results came back completely inconclusive. So the researchers had to take things out of the haunted house and into a highly controlled laboratory. To isolate the effect cleanly, the research team designed this incredibly elegant setup. They brought 36 volunteers into the lab. To set the mood, they played either calming instrumental music or the kind of deeply unsettling, creepy music you'd hear at a haunted house attraction. But here's the clever trick. Half the time, without the participants knowing it all, the researchers secretly blasted infrasound through hidden subwoofers in the room. The volunteers had absolutely no idea the subwoofers were even turned on. Section 3. The body's invisible response. Remember, the volunteers couldn't hear the infrasound, but their bodies were telling a completely different story. The biological evidence here was shockingly clear. Regardless of whether they were listening to the pleasant, calming music or the creepy music, whenever those hidden subwoofers were blasting the inaudible infrasound waves, the participants felt noticeably more irritated and annoyed. They consistently rated whatever music they were hearing as sadder. And most importantly, researchers found significantly higher levels of cortisol in their saliva. Now, cortisol is our body's primary stress hormone. It's the chemical responsible for the fight or flight response. So these inaudible waves were triggering a measurable physical stress response in the body, flying completely under the radar of conscious awareness. Crazy, right? Section 4. Why we perceive ghosts. So how does a sudden spike in a stress hormone and a vague feeling of physical irritation magically morph into a full-blown ghost story? To connect the dots, we turn to Professor Rodney Schmoltz. He's a psychologist at McEwen University who investigates why people believe in the paranormal. He says, and I quote, "What infrasound may do is supply a bit of bodily discomfort that a ghost or haunting explanation can then attach itself to. You see, our brains absolutely despise unsolved mysteries.
When we feel sudden, unexplained discomfort and a spike in stress hormones, our brain desperately searches the environment for a reason.
It all comes down to a psychological concept called priming. Think of it like this. If you're a skeptic who doesn't believe in ghosts and you walk into an old building and get hit with infrasound, your brain rationalizes the physical discomfort by telling you, wow, this place is just really stuffy and uncomfortable. But if you are a believer in the paranormal and you step into a gloomy old manor, meaning your brain is already primed to look for ghosts, your mind readily accepts that sudden, invisible wave of physical discomfort as undeniable proof of a spirit or presence in the room.
Section 5. The limits of science. While we've done a fantastic job of solving the mystery of bad vibes, we definitely need to set some clear scientific boundaries here.
To ground our explainer, we turn to Chris French. He's an emeritus professor of psychology and author of a brilliantly titled book, The Science of Weird Shit. He rightly points out that while infrasound perfectly explains feelings of dread and unease, it definitely has its limits. He states, it may be a step too far to explain alleged poltergeist activity, such as objects flying off shelves, as resulting from infrasound. Basically, the acoustic waves from a boiler might make your heart race, but they're absolutely not strong enough to throw a teacup across the kitchen.
Professor French also highlights a really important point about misinformation. If you dive into internet forums, you'll inevitably see wild claims that infrasound vibrates at the exact resonant frequency of the human eyeball, causing visual hallucinations and making people literally see apparitions. Well, French strictly notes that this speculation is purely anecdotal. There is absolutely zero evidence from properly controlled studies to back up the claim that boiler-induced infrasound vibrates your eyeballs enough to make you hallucinate a ghost. Science gives us answers, but we have to stick to the data. Which brings us to the end of our journey today. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this question to ponder. Next time you're in a dark, creepy basement and the hair suddenly stands up on the back of your neck, how are you going to react? Will your primed mind leap to loitering spirits, or will you smile, take a deep breath, and just blame the rumbling old boiler in the corner? Understanding the world around us makes it a lot less scary and honestly a whole lot more interesting. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack the science today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next one.